Hello, everyone. I'm Victoria Radnothy from pickleball.com here with the fabulous writer of Pickleballers, Ilana Long. Ilana, how are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me on, Victoria. This is great.
So tell me, give me the synopsis. What is Pickleballers about?
Well, this is a sporty rom-com. It's kind of an enemies to lovers. Well, I like to call it an enemies to lobbers rom-com.
I love that.
It's sort of if you think about like the hating game and dodgeball and you kind of mush them together, that's what you get. So like pickleballers, it's about this woman, her name is Meg, and she goes through this really her brief marriage just implodes. And so what does she do? But her best friend Annie drags her out, of course, where? Onto the pickleball court, because that's the best place to reset and like have your mood lifted and everything else. So she gets really into this new community, and then she finds out the courts are going to be torn down. And the guy, this is like months later, and the guy who is tearing down the courts is the same hunky environmentalist who she had this brief fling with. Whoops. And so hilarity ensues and sexual tension and all the craziness. So
That sounds so much fun. I'm sold.
great.
So,
And
what
it
are
all happens in the Pacific Northwest, which is, on Bainbridge Island. A lot of it occurs on Bainbridge Island where pickleball began. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So, tell me, how did you research pickleball? Are you a player? Have you been to Bainbridge? Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, first of all, I'm a little obsessed with pickleball. As you can tell by my pickleball earrings, just have kind of an obsession with playing pickleball. And I st got started on that because a friend of mine had told me she's playing this new sport. She's like, "Oh, you'd love it. It's like ping pong, but you're like standing on the table." So I was kind of like, "Yeah, okay, that sounds really weird, but no, thank you." And then the pandemic hit, and I was feeling so isolated. And I had tried it, and I just felt like I needed to get outside, and I needed to be around people. And the perfect cure was to get outside and be 6 feet apart from people on the court and still have a social experience. So to me, and I know to a lot of people, I think pickleball just soared during that lockdown time where we had to, if you wanted to have, I'm an extrovert. So, I had to get out and I had to talk to people. And I
Hmm.
was so relieved to have pickleball. I mean, we were playing in the pouring rain. We were playing at any opportunity. We were just like, let's go play pickleball. So,
The obsession was real.
the obsession still is real. Like I play so much right now. My body is just a wreck. You know? I'm like, oh, okay, I've got like a bad ankle and I've got a back problem, but I can totally play. Yeah, you need a fourth. I'm in. I'll be
One
there.
more game, one more game.
One more game. We can do that. What are we on? Hour four now? We're okay. We're fine. This will be fine. So-
So, have you been to Bainbridge where your book is set?
yes. So I live outside of Seattle and it's about a 20-minute ferry ride from Bainbridge. And like I said, I love being outdoors, and Bainbridge is just beautiful. It's like a world away from the cosmopolitan Seattle, and then boom, you're on this island with these giant evergreen trees and mountains looming up in the background. Like the Olympic Mountains are right past Bainbridge, and it's just a gateway to that whole experience where you see these snow-capped mountains, and it's so beautiful. And I've been there a number of times. And the first time I went to the Founders Court, which is started by the people who were like the Pickleball Society of Bainbridge Island at Battle Point Park. And those courts are gorgeous. And I played on those courts. And then I got a tour, and anybody can get this tour of the house where pickleball began in 1965 by
Wow.
this guy named Joel Pritchard. And he was trying to find out some kind of way to like entertain his kids so the adults could like have some conversation. And so they went into the backyard. He's got like this blacktop. Well, he doesn't live there anymore, but there's this blacktop, like basically a driveway. And they set up this little net, and they started making up rules. And the adults were all out there, and they were like, screw the kids, let's just play this ourselves. So, so they started pickleball, and it was many years till it caught on really, as it's done. You know, like, well, I'm sure you know, like, I think 36.5 million people played pickleball
Oh,
last year.
it's crazy now. It's astronomical at this
It's
point.
crazy. It's so crazy. So, I think a lot of people are just realizing, wow, you can play. It's like multi-generation. You can play any age. You can play any background you have. I am so not a sports person. I was a swimmer because I didn't like to sweat and I didn't like to fall.
That's funny.
So, so pickleball was a real stretch for me because I'd never played anything eye-hand coordination before. And I'll tell you, I was really bad when I started. Like, nobody would play with me. That's why in this story, I made Meg a beginner because it is so hard to like come to something new and be a beginner. Especially when I sort of saw myself as being out of my sports zone of being able to pick up something new, like age-wise and everything. But golly, I just love it. And I got better at it. And I'm decent now. I've won some tournaments. I won a tournament on Bainbridge.
Oh,
So,
really?
yes,
Congratulations. That's so
thank you.
cool.
So it's been fun.
So, where did this idea come from since you were spending so much time personally on the pickleball court? When were you like, wait a minute, I need to turn this into a rom-com?
Well, the funny thing was, what had happened was I had written this other book, and it was a science fiction young adult, and it was at the heart there was a pandemic, and when by the time we sent it out to editors, it was the actual pandemic, and people were like, "Oh no, no!" And my agent was like, "I'm like, what do I do? I don't know what to do." She's like, "You're a comedian. You need to write something funny and you need to do something, you need to write something you love right now." Because I was feeling really down about the pandemic and everything else. And so I did. I wrote something funny. And I have a background in stand-up comedy and an improv comedy. And I was like, wow, this is so much fun to write. And then my there was a romantic story as a side story in it. And my agent and my editor said, the romance is really good here. Bring that forward, make that the main story. And I was like, oh yeah, that would work. And so I did. And that's, I think the idea of community, like found family, at the pickleball courts, I mean, that really happens for people. It happens for me, but so does romance. I mean, my daughter said that the most popular first date in Seattle in the summertime is pickleball. And
I believe
it's
it.
true. It's because it's social. There's like no pressure. You can get out there, you can,
And learn a
meet
lot about someone too.
and learn a lot about whether they're going to be poaching the ball from you. You're like, no, not that guy.
Did they score winners or
But if they're like, yes, you're like, uh-oh. So you can learn a lot about a person on the pickleball court. And I have made friends who I would never have met under other circumstances. And so I'm so grateful to pickleball. And I think that's why romance is perfect for the pickleball court. And I am so excited that I managed to like my timing was so bad on the pandemic book and so good on the pickleball book.
Yeah,
So, so I was like, wow, I really got to this first, so I'm pretty thrilled that I have this pickleball book. It just came out last week. Penguin Random House published it. Here, I'll show you. The cover is like as adorable as humanly
I
possible.
love it.
That's so cute. And the spine looks so pretty.
I love it.
Yes, I love it. So I just and I love these characters. They're like people to me. And I got to narrate the audiobook too, which was super duper cool.
Oh, I
So
bet. Tell me about that experience. What was that like?
yeah, usually if you're a nonfiction writer and you write an autobiography, usually, oh, you're going to narrate your audiobook because it's your life story, but fiction writers don't generally narrate. So I was a little nervous. I did send an audition tape into Penguin Random House and I said, could I narrate Pickleballers? What do you think? Listen to this. And they're like, yeah, you can. So I was so excited because I went to this really professional, beautiful studio in downtown Seattle, and I had a great director who's done a lot. And I was nervous because they had offered me some really great voice talent. They said, and one of them was like my favorite voice person. I was like, oh, am
Mhm.
I turning this down? And is this really stupid and egotistical of me? Which perhaps it was, but anyway, either way, it was like a risk that I took. And I'm so glad I did it because I felt like so much ownership over this whole artistic process and the creative process. And I felt like, this is my baby in a sense. This is my first published novel. I am not a young author, and it was a great opportunity to do something entirely myself and said, I did it from start to finish. I did it all. And these voices of the characters that had been in my head, because I have a background in theater and performance, I could reproduce them as I heard them in my head. And it was really fun. They really came to life for me, and I hope they do for my listeners and my readers too.
So, since you do have that comedy background, how has that been super beneficial for when you sat down and said, I'm going to work on the comedy of the rom-com part?
Well, the comedy came first, actually, which is kind of funny because, I actually stole some of my own stand-up jokes and I put, I'm like, wait, I know a place for that joke.
That's awesome. That's perfect.
And it's great because, it's going to get a bigger audience there than it ever did in the room with all the hecklers and
Sure.
everything. So, so that was fun. I had the comedy and also the people who play pickleball, it's just like a treasure chest of comedy, right? You go to the courts. I just laugh my head off when I go to the courts. People say the funniest things, and I'm like always running to my phone and writing them, texting them to myself. I'm like, oh my God, it's so funny. So, so the comedy is out there. I mean, it is just out there. And I tend to see things in a real quirky way. And I'm always walking around with either, a notepad or usually my phone. And I figured out how to text myself. And then what I do is I stick it all into like documents when I get home.
Mhm.
But I also think of things like I swim a lot and I think of things when I swim. And I'm like, oh
Mm.
God, I gotta remember to the end of the lane so I can get my phone. Wait, what was the wording? It was so
Yes.
funny. I can't remember it.
I do the same thing though. I so understand exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
So, what is the value when it comes to rom-coms? Because right now we are getting such a rom-com renaissance just in pop culture with movies and books and TV shows. What is the value of that comedy element with romance and telling a good story?
Okay, I think rom-com is hitting hard right now. And sporty rom-com is hitting hard. Sports rom-coms, it's so in right now. And I know why. I know why.
Ooh, tell me
I'll tell
why.
you. I think it has to do with a lot of change that's been happening in the world. Like I think the pandemic was such a moment to reset for all of us. It was an international unifying experience, as terrifying and terrible as it was. It also brought us all to this point where we were like communally thinking, we need to cherish the things we have. We need to love what we have and recognize and be grateful. And I think we all, at least I know a lot of people who had a same kind of awakening as I had, which was here I've been going along in my life, and suddenly, boom, this catastrophe hits all of us. And I think that's why both comedy and romance and the need to connect with people and the need to be outside and to play sports and to reinvent ourselves at this stage in our life, going, we made it through that. We made it through that really hard time. And here we are. And it's time to uplift ourselves. So that's why I think it really came around like that.
I love that. That's so perfect, honestly. A perfect way to describe why this is happening, why this is so popular, why this sport has just boomed like crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I really think so. So, yeah, I do.
And what was your timeline? When did you start writing this and to when your published date was just a few days ago?
Well, you know, so I was working full time as a teacher, and actually, when my time was very structured like that, it was easy for me to write. So in 2020, I had that conversation with my agent where she's like, write something funny, write something that you love, and I started writing in my planning periods. So I would have this 50-minute period where I'd sit down and I'd be like, "Brrrr," I've been writing for a lot of years, but I've never written so fast in my life. Right? I also felt like this pressure that pickleball was going to boom and I had to be first. And I really was feeling that intensity of it. So I was writing as fast as I could. And it got to my agent. I was finished in about 6 or 7 months. And then she looked it over. And in about a year, we were sending it out to editors. So that was maybe in 2021 or 2022. And then it's taken till now. It takes a while for books to
Mhm.
get from the publishing point. There was a lot of, well, like I said, it was a comedy and it was not a romance really. And so I had to rewrite the book as romance first. And I was amazed. My editor said to me, he needs to be in every chapter. And I was like, how am I going to get this guy into every chapter? He's not even anywhere near here. And I had to do a lot of juggling and figure out ways to get him in. And it's so funny because once I figured out that puzzle, and it was a cool mental achievement to figure out that puzzle, the book was so much better. The book was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't write this as a romance to begin with. It makes sense as a romance. It's just so much better and so much more complete. And and so I got this 2 book contract. I'm writing the second one now. It's actually in revisions. It's called
Oh,
Pickle
wow.
Perfect, and it has some of the same characters that some of the tiny characters in Pickleballers come back as the main characters in Pickle Perfect, and 2 of the characters, Rooster and Laverne, this older couple who are in their 70s, he plays pickleball. They're just so lovable. And I thought, oh, I can't let them go. I'm going to put them in the second book too.
Oh,
So
congratulations. That's so
I know.
exciting.
Isn't that great? So that's wonderful. And that'll come out about a year from now also. And so it's a great, it's just so great. It took longer than I imagined it would, but also I'm so happy with the result. Like just like getting this cover, like from the idea to them hiring the artist, to me looking at the original drawings, to me saying, yes, I like this, maybe make the paddles a little bit this, just I was like, wow, look at it. It came out so great. And, I almost cried when I saw this cover.
Oh,
Okay, I did cry a little.
I don't blame you. I absolutely would cry too.
It's like, oh my God, it's real. So,
So that's amazing. So tell me a little bit more about what that feeling is like now. As you said, this is your first published novel, holding that, looking at it, saying, oh my gosh, people can buy it now. Friends, loved ones can all read my work. What is that experience like for you?
it is so gratifying. And so I just feel like a person who's gone through this metamorphosis of my own self and so much growth in my own creativity lately. I was a teacher for a lot of years. I raised my kids for a lot of years, and I had this experience where I was doing these things that were fulfilling but different. And now I feel like it's a very amazing experience to be able to focus on your own creativity or your own growth and say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to put 100,000% into it, every single bit I have. And with that new growth came like all this, well, it was hard work, and I'll explain that in a second, but also other creativity. I used to be a songwriter and a singer as well as an actress. And I've started playing the piano and the guitar again and writing music again and going to open mic nights for my music. And I'm going to record some of my music this year. So I feel like my brain is just firing, firing, firing everywhere, with creative stuff. And to hold the book, Victoria, let me tell you, I I sent out requests for people to read my manuscripts to 143 agents over the course of 2.5 years.
Oh my
And I was
goodness.
writing each letter individually with that agent in mind. I had three novels I had written already and a nonfiction book also. And nothing was coming through for me. And it just took one agent to go, yeah, I like this. And it was the science fiction novel. And but after all that experience, to have this success and to know it wasn't just like an accident, it was something I worked my butt off for. And knowing that, like, look at you, look where you are and what you're doing and how you're interviewing people and for this, for pickleball.com and having this experience. You worked for it. I worked for it. You don't just arrive at places and get there. It's about self-advocacy. And that's why it feels so good to have success because you know that you did it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you've gotten some pretty high praise from really notable places like Cosmo, Good Housekeeping, fellow New York Times bestselling authors. What is that like?
Right. Oh my gosh. It's so great. It's so great. I mean, I feel, just, oh God, I can't think of the word. This is the worst for an author when you can't think of the word.
Your words, people, you know?
I feel very grateful that to be recognized in that way, it's important to me. And I do, they tell you don't read any reviews, but the trade reviews and those kind of reviews from Cosmo, Good Housekeeping, and I also got a star from Kirkus Trade Magazine, and I got great reviews from some other trade magazines and Publishers Weekly and the American Library Journal. I just was like, that is so like celebratory for me to have that experience of being recognized in that way. Because imagine if you're like a painter and you paint great paintings, but then nobody gets to see them because you can't get an art show or whatever. And then you decide to just paint over it. And then the painting is gone. And sometimes I feel like my writing for years, I was writing into the void. Nobody saw it. Nobody read it. What's the point? And I felt like I need readers. And one of the ways to get readers is to get promotions and to get heard and get your voice seen and get your story out there. And those reviews, like in Cosmo and in Good Housekeeping, are big for opening the doors and letting people see, okay, I've done this, take a look, read it, and I hope you love it. And so that's why that feels so good to have that kind of recognition.
Absolutely. So
Mhm.
here's a funny question for you. I am an avid romance reader. So, what is the spice level of this book?
Okay, everybody asked me that question. Okay. Well, let me just say it's closed door. Okay.
Okay.
So but it is spicy, sexy. It's a very sexy book. I had a friend of mine just like 2 days ago was on the pickleball courts and he's read the book and he comes up to me. He's an older guy and he like whispers something in my ear. Like he repeats a line that I wrote. And I was like, oh my God, you read that. It's like, you should not be reading that. He's
You
like,
are
well,
not the target
my
audience.
mom had a copy.
That's so funny.
He's like, well, I like that scene. That's my favorite scene. So, we need a little bit of romance and a little bit of spice,
Oh, absolutely.
I would like to make my books a little spicier. I'll tell you, I have a tipping point where I feel like, oh, will I be able to look my children in the eye? What is the number at which I would let them read this and know their mother wrote it?
Right. What's the threshold?
Right? It's a little lower than I think I'd like, but I mean, it's definitely sexy. It's definitely.
That's so funny. And that's funny because that's something I've honestly thought about a lot because a lot of the very popular sports romance books right now, they're hockey, it's, baseball, it's football. Maybe tennis, even with the Challengers movie recently.
Sure, sure. That
You know?
just, yeah, it was a big deal.
But
So
like pickleball, it doesn't feel super sexy yet. It just doesn't. I don't know, because I guess maybe I'm so close to the sport, maybe it just doesn't have that appeal yet. So
I actually think it's so sexy. I think pickleball is so sexy. I just think, you go out on the courts and, people are in their pickleball clothes, which is, you're going to sweat and sweating is sexy and, to a certain point,
for
not
sure.
really, not like, just like, not like you need a sponge to squeeze out your shirt afterwards. Not so sexy, but like, but people with that athleticism and when your adrenaline is up, it's the same experience as like infatuation. Your heart rate goes up, your pupils dilate, your cheeks flush. You're in that sense of like your most intense physical being, which is very sexy, So that's a kind of, to me, that's kind of one of the things that makes pickleball or any sport so prime for romance.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, this was so delightful. Thank you so much, Ilana, for chatting with me and telling me about your book and talking pickleball and romance and all this stuff. It was so much fun.
I loved it. It was really fun. Thanks a lot, Victoria. I appreciate it. Oh, wait, let me hold this up one more time. Pickleballers.
And where can people buy it?
Okay, so you can go to ilanalong.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Ilana Long Writes. Or you can just, and you can go to Penguin Random House and buy the book directly. You can also get it at Barnes and Noble, at your local Barnes and Noble. You can get it on Amazon. It is everywhere now. Yay. And that's where you'll find pickleballers.
Awesome. Thank you so much.